Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
We're tackling something today that I think a lot of us, well, a lot of us struggle with, especially if you're, a young professional just starting out or a student trying to figure out your finances, or, and this is especially relevant for our listeners today, if you're part of Gen Z trying to navigate, the Indian economy. And even more specifically, we want to talk to architects and designers today because let's face it, the traditional advice about how to, build wealth, it doesn't always apply, does it?
Yeah, it really doesn't. It's like you're told to study hard, get a good job, buy a house, all that. But honestly, that can feel a lot like just running in place. You know what I mean? Working just to cover the bills every month without really getting ahead. And that's especially true here in India, I think.
It is, absolutely. You might be earning, what seems like a good salary, but then it just disappears. EMIs, expenses, it all adds up, and you wonder where it all went. So today we're going deep, really deep, into some strategies that can help you, our listeners, break free from that cycle, escape that paycheck-to-paycheck life and build real financial freedom. And these strategies, they're specifically tailored to the Indian context, so you can actually use them, in your everyday life. We've got some really insightful sources we're going to be drawing from today.
We do. The first one is this YouTube video, How to Break the Middle Class Trap Before It's Too Late. It's really eye-opening, really makes you think. And then we've got Breaking the Middle Class Trap Validated Strategies, which dives into the research and expert opinions that back up a lot of what the video talks about. And finally, we're bringing in Gen Z's Guide to Indian Financial Freedom, which, as the name suggests, offers a really valuable, on-the-ground perspective from young people actually living and working in India.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
What exactly is this middle class trap thing?
Right. So the basic idea is that by doing what you're supposed to do, going to school, getting a decent job, maybe even buying a house with a loan, you can end up kind of stuck, right? You're reliant on that regular income every month. You might look financially stable on the surface, but underneath, you're actually really vulnerable.
Oh, I see. It's like a house of cards, maybe.
Yeah.
Looks okay from the outside, but one strong breeze and...
Exactly. And that's something Gen Z's Guide to Indian Financial Freedom highlights really well, how this plays out specifically in India. You might have a job, be earning money, but you're still living paycheck to paycheck, constantly thinking about those EMI payments. It's like you're working so hard just to stay in the same place.
Yeah, that feeling of running but not really going anywhere. And the thing is, this isn't just an Indian thing, is it? I mean, it's a global phenomenon, although the details will differ from place to place.
You're absolutely right. The Validated Strategies piece mentions this 2022 report from the U.S. Federal Reserve, and it's shocking. A huge percentage of households over there, they couldn't even handle a small, like $400 emergency. So, this feeling of financial fragility, it's much more common than we might think.
That is surprising, isn't it? You'd think that in a developed country like the U.S.?
Yeah, you would. But it goes to show that income isn't the whole story, right? It's also about how you manage that income and the financial systems you're operating within.
Makes sense. So then for our listeners, the architects and designers in India, Gen Z's Guide, actually brings up a really crucial challenge, right? It's that irregularity of income, the whole client payment delays thing.
Oh, absolutely. It adds another layer of complexity to this whole middle class trap thing, because it's not just about managing a steady paycheck. It's about navigating these, ups and downs in income. And that makes the strategies we're about to discuss even more important.
Right. And the first step, and they hammer this home in the YouTube video, is to really understand where your money is going. You have to track everything, right? Every little expense. They even mention things like, a center fresh or aloo bhujia. It sounds a little extreme maybe, but...
But it makes sense. The act of writing it down, that in itself can change your behavior. The Validated Strategies piece connects this to the whole idea of nudges, those little things that can influence our decisions.
Like from that book, Nudge, by Thaler and Sunstein, right?
Exactly. So when you actually see where every rupee is going, you become so much more aware of those little spending habits, the ones you might not even realize you have.
Ah, okay. It's like shining a light on those dark corners of your spending, the stuff you usually don't think about.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that clear picture, then comes the part we all know we should do, but often struggle with, cutting back.
Yeah, no one likes to hear that, right? But it's not about deprivation, it's about being intentional. Vicky Robin and Joe Dominguez talk about this in Your Money or Your Life, figuring out what actually matters to you versus what's just habit or impulse.
Makes sense. So give us an example. What's something people could maybe cut back on?
Well, the YouTube video uses this very relatable example. Ordering food online, even when you have perfectly good food at home. It's so easy to do, right? But it adds up.
It does. Okay, so track everything, cut back. And then there's this idea from the YouTube video that I found really interesting. It's about focusing on just a 1% reduction in your expenses.
Right, the 1% rule. It sounds almost too small to make a difference, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But they argue that that's actually the beauty of it.
Exactly. It goes back to the whole atomic habits philosophy, small changes over time leading to big results.
Right, like in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I remember that.
And research actually suggests that these small steps make it easier psychologically. It doesn't feel like a huge sacrifice, so you're more likely to actually do it. And validated strategies backs this up.
So if your monthly expenses are, let's say, 50,000 rupees, a 1% reduction is only 500 rupees.
Right, which might be as simple as skipping one online food order a month.
And that might not seem like much, but the video highlights that if you invest that 500 rupees consistently, over time, it can really grow. So the initial focus isn't on the amount, it's on building the habit.
And that habit, as the YouTube video emphasizes, is crucial when we talk about the next step, which is building that financial safety net. They're really adamant that before you even think about investing, you need a solid emergency fund.
Okay, emergency fund. So how much are we talking here?
They suggest aiming for about 6 months' worth of your essential living expenses, kept in cash, accessible, but not too accessible.
Right, not so easy to dip into. And validated strategies actually brings in some other perspectives too, like from Suze Orman.
Yeah, she often recommends going even bigger, maybe 8 to 12 months worth of expenses, just for that extra peace of mind.
Which makes sense, right? Because the whole point of an emergency fund is to have that buffer.
Exactly. And the YouTube video points out that it's not just about the money, it's about the psychological impact. It reduces fear and anxiety, knowing you've got that backup if things go wrong.
I can see that. It's like a safety net, right? It takes the pressure off.
It does. And speaking of safety nets, something that's absolutely crucial, especially in India, is health insurance.
Yes, definitely. The YouTube video really emphasizes this, how a single medical emergency can wipe you out financially.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just talk. The data supports this. Validated Strategies cites research showing that a lot of personal bankruptcies are linked to medical expenses. You can't afford to ignore this.
Absolutely. And Gen Z's guide actually gets into the nitty-gritty of health insurance in India, comparing different policies, even mentioning specific companies like Star Health and Digit.
Right, and that's important because you need a policy that actually works for you, your individual needs.
Okay, so we've got our expenses tracked, we're cutting back, we've got our emergency fund and health insurance. What's next?
Well, then we need to talk about debt. The YouTube video introduces this concept called the debt-to-income ratio, DTI for short.
DTI, okay. So for those of us who aren't finance experts, break that down for us.
Sure. Basically, it's the percentage of your monthly income that goes towards paying off your debts, like EMIs and such. The general advice, according to sources like the CFPB, is to keep your DTI below 36%.
36%, all right. But the YouTube video, they take a bit of a different approach, don't they?
They do. They suggest aiming for a DTI even lower, below 20%. And their reasoning is really interesting. They argue that when you're paying a lot in EMIs, you don't really own the thing you're paying for.
I see. Like you're working to pay off the lender, not to build wealth for yourself.
Exactly. It really makes you think about debt in a new light.
It does. And this brings us to something that's particularly relevant here in India, especially for Gen Z, the whole social pressure and consumption thing.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. Validated Strategies talks about this idea of conspicuous consumption, buying things just to show off. It's like a status symbol thing.
Right, like those classic economic theories, Veblen and all that. And then there's Juliet Schor's work, The Overspent American, which looks at how social competition fuels all this overspending.
And Gen Z's guide connects all this to social media and the pressures young people face in India today. It's that constant need to keep up with the trends, the latest phone, the coolest experiences.
Right, and the guide even mentions how brands here target FOMO really effectively. Like they gave this example about CR ads and how they kind of make you feel poor if you're not part of their exclusive club.
Yeah, it's all about belonging, fitting in. And the YouTube video actually touches on this too, how it's tied to our evolutionary past, that need to be part of the tribe.
Fascinating, isn't it? How all these things are connected.
It is. So really, it comes down to being self-aware, understanding why you're buying what you're buying. Is it because you truly value it or because you're trying to impress someone or keep up with everyone else?
Great point.
Huh.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. If our listeners were to walk away with just a few key takeaways, what would they be? Especially for our young professionals, students, and architects and designers in India.
Well, first and foremost, just start. Take action. That's what the YouTube video emphasizes, the just do it mentality.
Love that. Action over everything.
Exactly. And then, based on all the sources we've looked at, there are a few key strategies that really stand out. Track your expenses meticulously, every rupee, cut out unnecessary spending, things that don't truly bring you joy. Embrace the power of small savings, even just that 1% rule.
Okay, so track, cut, save, what else?
Prioritize building that emergency fund, at least 6 months worth of expenses. And get good health insurance. It's not an option, it's a necessity.
Right, it's about protecting yourself.
Exactly. And then be mindful of your debt to income ratio. Keep it low, below that 20 to 36% range. And finally, be aware of social pressure and FOMO. Don't let it control your spending.
Especially in India, where, there's a lot of emphasis on keeping up appearances.
And for our architect and designer listeners, these strategies are even more important because of the fluctuating income thing. That emergency fund becomes a lifeline. And tracking your spending helps you manage those ups and downs.
So as we wrap up, here's a thought I want to leave you with. Think about just one area where you could cut back by 1% this month. Just one thing. Now, imagine that small saving growing over time. How much could it become? And then, even more importantly, think about this. What's one piece of conventional financial advice that might actually need to be reevaluated in the Indian context?
It's about questioning the norms, finding what works for you, your situation.
Exactly, because ultimately it's about taking control, right? Building that financial future that you want.
Absolutely. And remember, the biggest step is the first one. Download a budgeting app. Skip that one unnecessary purchase. Calculate your emergency fund goal. Whatever it is, just take action. That's what matters most.
Fantastic advice. All right, everyone, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.